And for all those who are tuning in, this is Common Sense America. I'm Eden Hill. It is Thursday, November the 17th, and it is a beautiful, very cold day here in Eastern North Carolina. And I know for most of the United States, it is very cold. What global warming? Anyway, I am looking forward to introducing you yet again to Alexander Salter, commentator for Young Voices and a friend to the show. Good morning, sir. How are you? Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I saw you staring, but I'm like, I'm not getting a response. How are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you, Eden?
Good. Welcome back to the show. It's so great to see you. Happy holidays. Are you guys getting ready for Thanksgiving?
Yes, we are. I'm looking forward to it. I have a quick trip to Florida starting on Saturday, coming back on Monday or Tuesday. I don't recall. But then after that, no more travel before the holidays. So I'm looking
Oh,
forward to getting that done.
good. What part of Florida are you going to?
Fort
Atlanta?
Lauderdale.
Oh, nice. Very nice. I
Yeah,
love
that should be a
Florida.
good trip.
Fabulous, fabulous. So, Mr. Texan here, I won't push too much Florida on you. I was teeing your interview up to our audience, and I'm going to tell you, I read all of your articles, but my favorite one is the one in the Washington Examiner, and I just read it. The Republicans must not blow their midterm election responsibility. I have to go there and ask you. So, what are your thoughts now?
Oh, my goodness. No red wave, barely a red trickle. Everybody's saying it. It was really interesting that when I wrote that article, by the time I got it done and was shopping it around, I had a hard time getting it published because all the polls were predicting a Republican blowout. And so thankfully, the Examiner ran it, and turns out candidate quality matters, running smart campaigns matters. And so all those hopes that the GOP had did not only materialize, but frankly, make them look pretty silly. How can you not beat an incumbent party when there's a stagnant economy, 8% inflation, geopolitical turmoil, pretty much everything that could be going wrong is going wrong, and still voters wouldn't give the opposition party a mandate? That's got to tell you something.
It says a lot. I have to ask you this, and I know that this wasn't we hadn't talked about this before the show, but I have to ask you, you know, what are your thoughts on Trump, from the other night? I mean, it seemed kind of lackluster, and I've asked people on the show to send me their comments, but I'm not I haven't seen too many people excited.
It was an unusually policy focused address for Trump, who's usually much more personal and energetic. But yeah, I think it fell flat. A lot of people are commenting it just doesn't seem like it used to. It's not new, it's not fresh. It seems like we're going on for a sequel of a show that really should have been canceled 2 or 3 seasons ago. I just don't think people are excited about it anymore. It's not going to make the same impact that it did in 2015.
Well, I saw DeSantis say to reporters the other day, just chill out a little bit. But, DeSantis, and I am a huge fan of DeSantis, and everybody who watches the show is fully aware of that. His speech the other night, winning Florida, and he didn't need a political cult to endorse him and go along with him on the campaign. And yet he still won. And so the energy I saw there spoke volumes to me. It's like a young Jack Kennedy and his family at the very forefront, and maybe a glimmer of hope for the American people. What do you say to that?
The results really speak for themselves, don't they? To the extent that there was anything like a red wave, it happened in Florida. I think
Yes.
that that tells you something with Governor DeSantis at the top of that ticket for the statewide races, the successful effort to make sure that you get more representative congressional districts that still return many Republicans at the national level,
Mm-hmm.
Republican success for the state house. All these things are going right. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that that tells you that Governor DeSantis has stumbled across, well, I won't say stumbled across, has actually purposefully pursued a
Yeah.
message that turns out to be something that voters definitely want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
You obviously have to wonder about 2024 ambitions, and some people are worrying that this is peaking too early. We do have quite a few days left. We have something like 700 days left before the
Oh,
next
you counted.
presidential
Okay.
election. So you don't want to run out of the gate too fast, but at the same time,
Yeah.
it's hard to look at that success and see that as anything other than a good reason for optimism.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I read the whole article to the audience as we were transitioning, and there's a couple points I want to highlight with you, and I wanted to ask you about. it goes back to the political cult piece that you said. Dear GOP, you've picked your candidates, including for crucial Senate races, based on personality cult rather than political competence. Millions of people are counting on you to right the ship of the state, reversing the national sclerosis that defines the past 2 years. When you said that, it hit me right between the eyes because I live in this battleground state of North Carolina, and the Senator elect Ted Budd, and I sat there, and having run for state house, I was in the same circles as him. But why is it that did he not have enough political competence to run his own Senate campaign, that he needed Trump to come here and endorse him and do a couple Save America rallies for him? And so my question to you is, what are your thoughts on, now that we see he won, but could he have won on his own? And I wonder the same for other candidates. I mean, could Oz have won without Trump? You sit there and wonder, and you see those two sides of the coin. What are your thoughts on that, especially as we head into this new Congress? What are your thoughts on that?
At this point, the Trump movement really is a general election loser. It's just not capable of sustaining a minimum winning coalition.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at all these candidates, what they were really good at is turning out strongly about 30% of the Republican base.
Mm-hmm.
That's never going to be enough to win a statewide election. That's never going to be enough to persuade independent voters and people in the middle who you need to break your way if
Mm-hmm.
you want to win these competitive races.
Mm-hmm.
Stop the steal is where election victories go to die. It's just
Mm-hmm.
not something that people want to hear. It's not something that you should be running on.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we have serious national problems. People want the opposition party to come forward with a serious governing agenda to fix those problems.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, they seem on relitigating 2020 over and over and over again. Enough. It doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. The
Mm-hmm.
American people aren't interested in going over these failures repeatedly. They're interested in looking forward for new solutions and new successes.
Yes.
Republicans had the chance to actually get that together and give it to voters, and they failed.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think, what are your being in economics, knowing your background, I continue to bring projective ideas for 2023, because we are there. And if, people are not projecting 2023 for their businesses, they got a bigger issue. So I'm sitting here saying, from the standpoint of, we got a new Congress, we got Republican majority for the House right now. What are your thoughts for 2023 projections from a federal standpoint, and I want to bring it back. I want to bring it back to the kitchen table discussions. What is
Thank
that
you.
going to do to our kitchen tables?
The best thing that a GOP House does is it stops the worst of the legislative agenda that might be coming from Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's a lot that President Biden and his administration can do unilaterally. The president has a lot of authority to govern via executive orders, something that I'm not terribly fond of, but that seems to be the current results of the system. Yes, we can and should change that, but that's not on the table right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because the legislative chamber is divided, I think that you can expect something approximating gridlock. Probably not as strong as during some of the Obama years, but
Mm-hmm.
at least you're going to get the House filter out some of the more destructive legislative proposals that would really already throw another punch at an economy that's already down on the canvas.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to give American businesses and American households some breathing room. At the
Mm-hmm.
same time, inflation is slowly coming back down, not as fast as I would like. It's worth keeping in mind that the Fed's economists themselves don't predict that inflation will return back to 2%, which is its target level, until 2025, which is a
Wow.
little bit strange when you think about it. If you're not tightening monetary policy fast enough to bring inflation down quicker than that, what are you actually focusing on?
So what are they
But
focusing on? What are they focusing on?
that's a great question. I wish that I could understand this Federal Reserve. They seem to be really concerned with the state of job markets, which is, again, a little bit concerning because one, you shouldn't be running monetary policy to goose the labor market. That's just not what it's for. And two, even very expansive monetary policy can't help labor markets for very long. One of the hard won lessons in macroeconomics from the 80s and 90s and early 2000s is that there actually is no trade off between inflation and unemployment. You can have full employment with 2% inflation. You can have full employment with 10% inflation.
Uh-huh.
What
Mm-hmm.
matters is what market participants expect matches what the Federal Reserve is doing. And as long as you can get those expectations to match up, you can have a fully functional, hot performing economy with very low and stable inflation. I think that right now, though, you have a lot of people at the Fed who have a more activist bent and aren't really set on setting stable conditions for monetary policy. They want to tinker with outcomes. They want to micromanage. So they're much more focused on interest rate policy. I think that that's not great for long run American economic health. And I wish that they would be a little bit more serious at getting control over inflation. The truth is, we don't know what stable prices actually means in terms of the Federal Reserve's mandate. Congress has never told the Fed what that means. Stable prices. Well, how low does inflation have to be for prices to be stable? But I think the one thing that we can all be sure of is that right now, price growth running over 3 times as fast as the Fed's official 2% goal, that's
Mhm.
not stable prices. We need to get that down a lot faster so that American households get some relief.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. You just said something about the Federal Reserve micromanaging piece to it. And, I sit here and outside looking in, kitchen table, veteran spouse, former candidate, former Trump appointee. And I sit here and say, I have to budget. I have to keep a balanced budget for our household. But yet, those screwballs up in Washington don't have to. And I'm sick and tired of them, taking more and more of our money so they can go and freely spend it and then say, "Oh, it's back on the American people. Let's raise their taxes." And their economic stability is faltering already as it is. And so let me ask you this, and I'm ranting because I'm fed up. I am fed up like every other American person out there. I am fed up with the Fed. I am fed up with the Fed. I am fed up with what is ever is going on within the administration. I don't even know. Half the time he falls asleep and he doesn't even know where he is. Okay, I got it on my system. So let me go back and ask you this. As we are projecting, we're projecting 2023, but let's also, tomorrow, my dear friend, Money Talk with Melanie, she's going to be on doing more of a kitchen table discussion on uh, Black Friday savings and, travel for the holidays and how the American family can be economically savvy during this time period. So as we're seeing those kinds of breakdowns that you just referred to, are what are your predictions for Black Friday? Do you think we're going to be seeing, this huge loss in revenue, or do you think people are just going to spend those credit cards, spend their savings to get through the holidays?
I think that you're going to see the usual pre Christmas Black Friday surge.
Okay.
I don't think that it's going to be unusual compared to prior years,
Okay.
right? Because you can't compare the Black Friday surge to the immediate weeks before. To get a real picture, you have to compare it to Black Friday last year and the year before
Right.
that, et cetera, to
Right.
make sure that you're comparing apples to apples.
Right.
And so, on the one hand, yeah, things are not great right now. The economy is a little bit stagnant. Inflation is eating away at household purchasing power that might reduce their propensity to consume. On the other hand, you do still have some pent up purchasing power lingering from
Mhm.
federal policy during the pandemic. From what I'm seeing in terms of airline prices, those things are going through the roof right now.
Yes.
So I think that all said and done, we're actually going to have those forces balance out and we're going to have a normal holiday shopping season. In other words, in line with expectations. It's not going to break the bank, but neither is it going to make people worry.
Okay, well, that's actually really good to know. I also want to talk about your other Wall Street Journal article that I was able to read a little bit, and I like the top. I like the title of it, and I did not tee up for this one, so I really would love for you to just kind of give an overview, the kitchen table overview for this one. Um, Jesus saves, but he's not a protectionist. Christians who decry international trade misunderstand the church's tradition. And I went on to further see all the scriptures cited. Break this down for me. Talk to me about this article, the title, and everything that goes into it, because I see you cite the Good Samaritan and just the traditions of the church and with trade and service to one another. Break this down for me and break this down for our kitchen table viewers.
Happy to do that. Especially on the right, and especially even more so on the religious right, there's been a sort of renewed skepticism of commerce, in particular global commerce. This idea that globalized economic activity, globalized markets, hollow out local communities, they destroy familial and other charitable commitments, and that especially Christians should be skeptical of them.
Mhm.
So when I and my co-author wrote that article, we wanted to really dig into the church's tradition and say, is that true? What resources are there within the Christian tradition to evaluate commerce, to
Mhm.
evaluate global economic trade, international finance? And
Hmm.
although scripture, church teaching is replete with warnings about the corruptive effects of wealth, it's actually dangerous to be wealthy. Like nobody disputes that. And
Right.
by the way, by ancient standards, all of us are fabulously rich. So that's something that should make us all very uncomfortable.
Yes.
Getting back to the main theme, when the church fathers, when scripture is talking about this idea of being neighborly, when we're
Hmm.
talking about international economic activity, commerce across political boundaries, the default tone and opinion is actually one of cautious optimism.
Hmm.
This idea that God has divided the human populations and divided the earth's natural resources in a way that would actually make us dependent on one another, in a
Hmm.
way that would actually make it possible for us to engage in mutual commerce to mutual advantage, to bring us close to one another.
Hmm.
Commerce is a way for people who do not know each other personally to nonetheless behave charitably towards each other. And
Hmm.
so by having that coming together, by having that charitable economic activity across international lines. And to clarify, by charitable, I don't mean like charitable giving. I mean the Christian virtue of love, like
Yeah.
devotion of the will to the good of another person.
Hmm.
By actually having that activity, we can actually bring communities together, lessen political tensions, and actually recognize our universal brotherhood. So
Hmm.
it's simultaneously true that the church, on the one hand, is very skeptical about wealth and its effects on one's soul. But at the
Right.
same time, the church is also cautiously optimistic about commerce and international commerce in particular. So we need to be able to hold those two thoughts in our head. We
Hmm.
need to be able to be comfortable with those tensions because they're ultimately productive tensions. They can help us be better citizens and they can help us be better Christians.
Do you think the modern day church even resonates with this thought process and this um, how you presented in the article? Do you think the modern day church is even remotely acceptable of this, or what are your thoughts on the modern day church? Because what I see in the modern day church is having grown up in the church, having been the granddaughter of a pastor, having been raised in an independent Bible, fundamental Bible church. I've seen a transformation over time in the churches where it is not like it used to be. It is not the olden days. They are more and more setting apart, um, to the point where I've heard many people say, and those in the Christian faith say, they're taking down the American flag. They're taking down the Bible flag because they don't even want to even be associated with that, and they're not talking about the issues of taboo. They're not talking about what is happening in our culture and being Christians to be able to speak in the public square. So, what are your thoughts on that?
If we're defining as the church the global body of Christian believers, I
Hmm.
think that there's actually a lot of internal divisions in those communities over how you approach these issues.
Hmm.
A lot of them are still very much traditional 1980s sort of rah rah go for it. Other
Yeah,
ones have been more skeptical. You're absolutely right. For my own part, I'm actually okay with the church being a little less politically engaged.
yeah,
I worry about associating too much the kingdom of God with the kingdoms of this world. And I'm certainly worried about ascribing to the United States a specific providential mission. That makes me deeply uneasy. But
yeah.
at the same time, I don't like people who want to steer the church away from being a public witness.
Hmm.
One of the church's roles is prophetic. We need to be able to stand amidst these times and say, the eternal truth that we know that has been bequeathed to us from apostolic times tells us that these things that we experience around us are very wrong and we need to reform them and we need to change.
Hmm.
So again, we have the case of productive tensions. On the one hand, the church should not be anywhere near political power as an
Right.
institutional community. On the other hand, Christianity does have public implications. It does have implications for the public square, and we shouldn't shy away from those conversations.
Hmm.
I am not among those who believe that Christians need to check their faith at the door when they
Hmm.
participate in public debate or vote. We absolutely can and should be Christians in public.
Yeah, yes, you hit the nail on the head. On that note, I am going to just thank you for being here. I absolutely love your work. I love your writings. I love having you here, here at Common Sense America. It is just I just love the content that you bring. Alexander William Salter is an economics professor at Rawls College of Business at Texas Tech University. And his first book, also, I recommend going out and getting Money and the Rule of Law, Generality, Predictability, and Monetary Institutions. It's a #1 bestseller on Amazon. So if you have a chance, go pick that up, especially as we are preparing for the holiday season. And you can find him at Wall Street Journal, Newsweek, Fox News Opinion, and National Review. Alexander, thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. Safe travels to Florida. Make sure you get back to Texas.
Same, Eden. God bless you and yours.
Oh, thank you. You too. I'll see you soon. I look forward to many more articles and having you come back. So we'll see you soon. Bye bye.
Absolutely. Take care.